Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today again we are with Mansi and Akhila who are with us for the part 3 of the webinar regarding working and studying in the USA. So today we are going to touch on working in the USA. So you will get a point of view about how it is it like working in the States, and Akhila and Mansi will be giving us a brief tour about how is it over there. So Akhila, Mansi, over to you.
Let me start by introducing the scope of practice as physical therapist in the United States. And here in the PPT, you can see that we have various job opportunities ranging from musculoskeletal, neuro, cardio, respiratory, and the specialization like pediatric, women's health, and geriatrics. Especially the ones that I've highlighted in red are more readily available in United States. So usually I have a lot of friends who are very interested in neuro, but they come to United States and understand that you don't have readily available jobs for neurosciences. So we should keep that in mind, that the job opportunities that are very readily available in United States are in MSK. We have excellent cardiorespiratory program and excellent pediatric program. Pediatric would have OPD settings and as well as school settings, and you have behavioral settings where you can work on spectrum disorders as well as a physical therapist. So when it comes to MSK, you have various sports and outpatient clinics in United States, which work on musculoskeletal conditions, can be acute, can be chronic, can be post-operative. You have cardio rehab and emergency care units in United States where you are doing an extensive cardiac program, and there your education in exercise or kinesiology also helps, because you have specialized outpatient settings with testing your cardiometabolic performance or your VO2 max, and your exercise tolerance testing. So these are very specialized clinics and outpatients where you can work in. And this is one good thing about United States, where they have good equipments in these specialized clinics, and they would be on par with the current recommendations or guidelines of practice. And even some of these researchers OPD clinics or your acute hospitals will give you an opportunity to do research while you're doing your clinical practice as well. And the major job opportunities which start in United States is your acute hospital. Acute hospital has standard acute cases with your emergency department, your trauma unit, and your other systemic units. And then you have skilled nursing facilities. Skilled nursing facilities are like hospitals. The patients are inside the facility. They're staying anywhere between 7 days to 14 days, is as the insurance permits them to stay. And skilled nursing facility is dominated by nursing and rehabilitation. So if a patient is admitted in skilled nursing facilities, they are primarily there to get rehabilitated after an operation. Maybe if for instance, if they had a total hip replacement, the insurance doesn't want this patient to stay very long in an acute hospital. So within 3 or 4 days, he'll be discharged if they don't have any complications, that is, to a skilled nursing facility. They will undergo all the rehabilitation and the nursing facilities in a skilled nursing facility, and then will go back to home. If the patient can go back home but cannot walk by himself, he will be receiving home health physical therapy. So somebody physical therapy or rehabilitation services, can be occupational therapy, can be speech therapy in their house, in their respective houses. But if the patient can walk or he's able, then he goes back to an outpatient clinic or an OPD setting, where the patient will go from his house to an OPD setting and the physical therapy, and will be given with all his rehabilitation services. Now, in a skilled nursing facility, the only difference is it doesn't have any operation theaters. It just has on-call doctors. So in skilled nursing facility, most of the arena is by your rehabilitation department and nursing department. So there is a lot of responsibility if you are a physical therapist in a skilled nursing facility, because the documentation or what happens to the patient from the start of care till the discharge is actually dependent on you as a therapist. And their paperwork, why they are not making progress, their documentation has to be upgraded timely at each setting. And this even happens in your may it be an acute setting, a skilled nursing setting, an outpatient. If you are taking a patient, you are responsible for their entire rehabilitation documentation. And in United States, the major documentation is EMR, that is electronic medical record. And you have extensive documentation, especially in these three highlighted settings, that is acute hospital, home health, skilled nursing, and outpatient. And if you don't get adequate permissions for your progress note, or you don't get certification from your primary care and you give services, your license can be in jeopardy and you can go into legal litigations, and you don't want to be doing that. So it is very important, if you're a foreign trained uh, candidate for physical therapy, or you're just starting a physical therapy job in the United States, be over alert and understand the ethics and the rules and regulations. So one of my recommendation is not to get into home health initially, as if you're starting your job as a physical therapist and you're new to United States. Start in an acute hospital or an outpatient where you have a strong team, and not all the paperwork comes just on you as an individual therapist. You have somebody to guide you in the initial few years, and then you can venture on different other options for job opportunities. Then you have something called as long-term care or transitional cares. Long-term cares are more disabled patients, or patients who require more assistance and they cannot walk, and they'll be requiring higher level of assistance. Since US has a majority population of baby, old baby bloomers or geriatric population, now we are seeing that there is lot of long-term care patients that are available, and there is high demand of physical therapists in this sector also. But you should know what you're getting into. They might be patients who have cognitive deficits or higher cognitive declines. Maybe Alzheimer's and dementia is very predominant in United States, and you would end up doing a long-term care evaluation and rehabilitation, which US doesn't, the insurance would not cover a major chunk of reimbursement. If you are maintaining it, it needs to show progress. So as a foreign trained, or if you're coming to United States on a visa, or you have been sponsored, and you usually are getting into one form of job, and you are there for a prolonged period of time because you have an employment visa and you can't change jobs. So one of my suggestions is know what you're getting into, what kind of patients you would be treating and what setup you're entering. Because if you don't like the job, then sometimes you might get stuck, and you are 21,000 miles away from you. And if you're not liking what you're doing, or if you don't have the necessary skill sets, because tackling patients with higher cognitive demands is not an easy job. You should know how to redirect the patients, which we are not taught those in our bachelor's program. So know what you're getting into. Then you have specialization OPDs. Specialization OPDs are like your women health or geriatric or specific neuro. These might be either a part of universities or specialization OPDs with latest advancement in PT field, with very expensive equipments, maybe anti-gravity treadmills, or maybe a virtual reality system, or UCLA has analyzation system for which will have a part of research in your job and your normal outpatient clinic also. But these jobs will require higher certification. As Mansi already said, you might require an OCS or an NCS degree. Some of the women's health clinics won't, even if you have a bachelor or master's, won't consider you for these clinics because you don't have a women's health level 1, level 2, or level 3 certification. So you require higher certifications to get into these jobs. So it is good to know that these are available, and if you're a student, you start aspiring and aiming your path towards these, if that is your long-term goal. Then you have travel PT. Travel PT is, you can do physical therapy job on an assignment basis for 12 week or 16 weeks, and it can keep switching you from facility to facility. Definitely the reimbursement for travel PT and home health is higher than your normal outpatient or acute hospitals. But one of the disclaimer here is, on an workers visa, you cannot do travel PT, because workers visa is very location specific. Your sponsorship will be, your sponsor would be from one location, and you can work only in that location. So you cannot do travel PT on an international workers visa. But if you have some other visas, you are more than open to try out travel PT. It gives you a better perspective of what are the job opportunities available and what do you like to do. Then you have your universities. Universities will again have academic job opportunities, like either you can get into teaching or academia, you can get into research, or you can get into um, your just teaching assistant, or you can just take courses. So uh, these are a ballpoint summary of what are the job availability in United States. And I think Somansi can take you further from here.
Thanks, Akhila. So you cleared your license, you decided where you want to work, you nailed your first job interview. So what does it entail? It depends on who your employer is. If you have a very large hospital system, it's a pretty big corporation, your interview is going to have multiple stages to it. If it is a small private clinic, that's probably just going to be a quick meet-in-person interview and a decision. So I've listed right there, they include multiple rounds. One of them is like a phone interview, then you have an on-site interview. Sometimes that on-site interview can also be divided into multiple parts, where you meet with your peers, you meet with the administration system, and you meet with the human resource team as well. If you clear all of that, if they offer you a job, then after that, there is a bunch of medical tests that you have to take. Since most of us from India have some sort of Mycobacterium tuberculosis exposure, we need to have chest x-rays which show no focal infection, things such as that. They require vaccination history. They require you to take a urine drug analysis. And then if you pass all of that, then the job is yours, and then you get the offer letter. So if you're preparing for a job interview, over time, what I have realized is typically employers are looking for proficiency in English. They really lay a huge emphasis on your communication skills. How well can you conduct yourself? The other thing that is pretty big over here, especially if it's a larger clinic, they are going to look for a team spirit. Can you work with an OT? Can you work with a speech language pathologist? Can you communicate and work as a part of a team with some doctors, nurses, things such as that? So being really that team person is always helpful. And then the third thing is, what are your goals? Like, how are you going to add value to that clinic? They need to see some incentive in hiring you. So when you're going into an interview, you may or may not accomplish those goals, but at least discuss those. Let them know that these are your aspirations and this is how you intend to improve your practice. So that's usually the interview process. Typically, I think everybody looks for jobs on Indeed. So that's the number one place where you want to look at. LinkedIn is a great place to connect with other people in your same field, look for job opportunities. Those are two big ones that I used myself when I was looking for jobs. So that's kind of what your interview process is. So if you've cleared that, then you're going to work as a PT. The bigger part of working as a physical therapist, no matter what your setting is understanding that insurance plays a huge role. Medical insurance that every single American has plays a huge role in the kind of services that you're providing, because physical therapy is covered with health insurances. There are 100 million thousand terms and conditions associated with that, which is quite frankly beyond the scope of this discussion. The big thing that you want to draw from that, like Akhila was alluding to, is your documentation has to be specific. It has to be accurate. It needs to describe that session as it happened. So say if a random person opened your chart note and read, they should be able to get a clear picture of what happened. It should demonstrate why what you did is something that only you can do. Why what you did was very specific to your skill. So you have to demonstrate that all the time in your evaluation, in your reevaluation, in your daily treatment note. So your documentation has to be very strong. Consider, the way we were told is, consider that as a legal document. A medical record is a legal document. So you have to dot your I's and cross your T's. So that's usually a learning curve. I think I don't remember meeting any PTs who are from India who've had a hard time understanding that. But there are certain words and verbiage that you have to use, which if you're working in a team, you can always have somebody who's your assigned mentor and read their notes, shadow them for a day and learn that. It's not a hard skill to acquire. And then the other thing that you want to remember is the duration of your plan of care, or for how long can you see a patient, is determined a lot by insurance coverage. So you can't see a patient for however long you want to see, unless they choose to pay you for that. Like if insurance is not paying, they're ready to do an out-of-pocket pay. So with that in mind, you have to be very proficient in the treatment that you administer. It has to be very specific. You have to show, demonstrable changes over a certain period of time. You have to use a lot of outcome measures, like use your TINITY if you're working with somebody on balance, use your LEFS if you're working with somebody who's coming for a lower extremity orthopedic condition, use a DASH if you're seeing them for upper extremity issues, so on and so forth. You need to show significant changes on these outcome measures. You cannot just write like patient feels better and expect that to be considered as a sign of progress. So always remember, your documentation should include a lot of objective measures. And it's a good practice because then that gives you some information as a clinician also, that you learn whether are you really making a change in this person's life, or is it just merely placebo. So that is the big thing. So remember, learn as you practice more. You will learn more about the insurance nuances. Never hesitate to ask questions. Every clinic, every office has a designated team who works with these insurance authorizations. Always ask questions. If you don't know, if you are unsure, assume that you don't know and go and ask. Don't draw your own conclusions, because that can get you in, like Akhila was saying, it can get you in legal suit. It's not going to, it's very rare that it will, end your professional career, but it's just another unnecessary stress that you'll have to deal with. So that's like another major chunk that you want to bear in mind, which we don't have to deal with in India. And then the next thing, this I think is a slide which is very, very important and kind of lays out the reality of what it is to be, as what it is financially to be a physical therapist in India. I think across the board, we hear that, oh yeah, PTs get paid more in US, which is true. But I have tried to do a little bit of a breakdown. First thing, remember, your salary is going to vary from state to state. Even within a state, it will vary if you're in an urban metropolitan area or if you're going to be in a rural area. Typically, your salary is going to be lesser if you're in a bigger city. It's going to be more if you're in a rural area. Drawback, if you're in a rural area, well, you're in a rural area. Drawback, if you're in a city, you're not paid enough and you're paying city expenses. So keep those things in mind. On an average, salary starts around $65,000 per year for 40 hours of work. That number is variable across the state. It is actually much lower in certain states where there is increased saturation of PTs, and it actually is much higher in a remote state like Alaska. So know that 65 to 75,000 is kind of what you're going to get when you start working as a physical therapist. Now, I've done this little expense breakdown, which is just something I wish I knew when I came here. So we're going to assume that somebody's got like $75,000 per year. You can convert it, it's probably like 60 lakhs per year. Okay, it sounds amazing when you convert it, right? 60 lakh rupees is like, oh my God, never will I ever make as much as a PT. But let's go down here. These taxes and all of this is with assumption for the state of Oregon where I work in. After taxes, after everything cut down, 53,000 is what you will get in your bank account. Now, the living expenses, assuming that the person is a single person, okay? So rent, car, health insurance, other living expenses, phone and all of that stuff, that will easily take 20,000 for the whole year, okay? And this is again me kind of being, you're not like a super big spender, okay? You say you go grocery, dining out and everything, that's another 5,000 that is gone. At the end of the year, assuming that none of the cost changes, nothing moved, you're probably going to save only 28,000 a year, okay? You throw in a trip to India, gone, 2,000 udari, okay? Throw in a trip anywhere else, another little money down. So understand that even though on paper, it looks lucrative, when you do the breakdown, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take at least 5 years for you to be with a sizable savings account. And if you think about how much you invest in your courses, I think it is a very good thing to remember. That it sounds like we make a lot here, but it is also that the expenses are just as high. There are a lot of hidden things that we don't have to pay for in India. You don't have to pay for health insurance. You don't have to pay necessarily for car insurance. You don't necessarily have a lot of other like expenses of, emergency room, like hospital bills and things such as that. Like all of those things add up very quickly. So always remember that in mind, that your savings are going to look pretty only after 5 to 6 years. And this is something that a lot of people just fail to realize, that the take home is much less than what is actually offered to you on paper. So I wish I knew this when I came here. It would have probably shaped a lot of my decisions rather differently. Having said that, I feel very comfortable in the place that I am at. But do the math in your head before you take the plunge. There are other options which you can pursue that may not be that huge of a dent financially. So that's the other thing. And then I think, yeah, so that's mostly, I think we touched based on special certificate, but that's mostly the licensure and the salary requirements. Also remember, you have to renew your license. Every state has license renewal. That is another money that you have to spend. Okay, so I think in the state of Oregon, it's every 2 years. So every 2 years, you're paying about $150. Now, to make sure that your license gets renewed, you need to have continuing education credits. That means you have to do certain courses over a 2-year span to maintain the status of your license. Those courses will also cost money. So you can see how quickly the cost starts adding up. So always negotiate for a fair deal for yourself when you're going into these salaries. Keep these expenses in mind. Communicate about those to your potential employers. Don't settle for anything. I would say don't settle for anything lesser than you think is not feasible. Your value is much more than what is always put on paper. So don't be shy to ask for more. You're definitely worth that. Okay. But yeah, that's what I have mostly for salary and licensure. And just to throw it in the bag here, it's a slight deviation from the topic that we are on, but a couple of other things that you can consider, when you're working is clinical mentorship. So I have the opportunity of getting some students from Pacific University who I am a mentor for through their clinical rotations. That is a very good thing. It helps you become a better learner. It helps you learn more things. You can definitely earn some education like that can add towards your license renewal process. And eventually, if you want to make that as your gateway into a teaching hospital, that could be something that you can look into. Teaching is definitely an avenue. If your profile looks great, you can be called in as a guest lecturer. It's usually hard. You need to know people in the facility. You have to build those contacts, go network a lot, and then that can definitely help you. And the third thing is clinical research. So if you are again associated with a research hospital system, you can be a part of some research programs that are already occurring in that hospital system, and that can help you boost your profile. So you don't necessarily earn a PhD, but you're still involved in research. You're still doing article writing. So it's a nice way without having to put the extra hard work. So those are the other aspects that you can consider once you've kind of worked for a couple of years over here and then wanna diversify. But yeah, that's what I have.
Thank you so much, Akhila and Mansi. It was very enlightening. And yes, we can go with the Q&A. So, Asmita, can you go ahead with the Q&A for us?
Yes, for sure. Okay, so I'm just going to skip the questions that we have already answered. So let's just ask questions which we think we have not answered. So can we work as a PT aide without license, whether it is during master's program, after master's program, or any education program?
You can, I don't think you can work as a PT aide during your master's unless it is on campus. It can't, I don't know if it can be off campus. Yeah, it has to be an on-campus position, and you can work as a PTA aide, again, no more than 20 hours a week. Once you have graduated and you've got your OPT period and you're waiting to take your license exam, you can certainly work as a PT aide during that phase, for sure. But yeah, when you're doing your master's, you have to make sure it's on campus.
Okay, that's good.
I think so. Even for PT aid, you require some form of prerequisites, which the employer has to determine. You cannot, anybody cannot become a PT aid.
Yeah.
Of course, for PTA or a PT, you both require licensure, so you can't.
When the PT aid and a PT assistant is different.
Yes. PT assistant.
Yeah, so for PT aid, you don't need license, but for PT assistants, you definitely need license.
Yes.
You have FCCPT credential for a PTA license. You have a licensure exam for a PTA as well, and you need that license for practicing PTA.
And what is the advantage of the certifications like OCS, NCS over just your licensure exam, specifically for the salary part?
So certain companies, that is not true for every employer. Certain companies offer something called as a certification pay, especially if that certification is something that needs to be renewed. So if it's a lifelong certification, they don't really care about it. But if it is a renewal based certification, you get something called as a certification pay, which is a percentage of a bonus that you will get after you acquire that certification. That is very specific to every employer. It is not a thumb rule. The other advantage to that is there's something called as performance evaluation. So your chances for getting a raise each year are a little better if you have something like that, especially if your peers don't, or if you're in a setting where there aren't too many people who are specialists and you're kind of one of them. So it helps with that. But again, that is dependent very specifically to your employer. So that's why it's good that you have to get that 3-year work experience before you take the test. So you can understand, is your employer willing to do it? Are you getting any financial incentive for taking that exam? Aside from the financial benefits, professionally, it does open up doors, like I said, for education, mentorship, and all of those things. It definitely puts you on the map with a lot of other therapists who are kind of working really well in building up a name for the profession. So eventually, you can start diversifying into that role and take it further from there. But yeah, the financial part is very specific for each employer. And do your homework. Don't just go by what we've said here, what your friend told you, or what you read somewhere. Do extensive research, because you're literally putting your life at stake when you're making this decision, and you don't want to make it a wrong or a poor one. It will be a very expensive decision that you will make, and it'll cost you more than just money. So do extensive homework. Plan at least, I would say, start reading up, start researching at least a year to a year and a half in advance. It shouldn't be a spur of the moment decision, at least right now.
Right. And that's about the questions for today.
All right.
Thank you so much, Mansi and Akhila. It was really good. The 3 webinars that you gave, they were really amazing. It was completely your experience that was talking to us. You guys working over there, you're going through the current situation, you being so frank about the whole situation over there, and it's going to be really beneficial for all the students and the physiotherapists who are planning to shift their base to United States. It was really good. Thank you so much. And I'm so sure anyone who's listening to this webinar will be definitely benefited because of the instructions and the guidance that you both have given us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for giving us so much of information. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting.
Our pleasure. Thank you.